Thank you everyone so much for joining. This is the second webinar in our education kind of spring pedagogy series. The first one was with a gentleman called Patrick Cadwell from Dublin City University. If you didn't get the chance to catch that, then it's on our YouTube channel to go and look back at. But today we are, or got the pleasure of being joined by Liam Bagley from Manchester Metropolitan to talk to us about his usage of Vevox. My name is Ethan Butler. I'm a customer success manager here at Vevox. I look after a host of universities here across the UK, Ireland, and a few elsewhere. So without further ado, if I can change my slide. So a bit about Liam. Liam is a senior lecturer in physiology at MMU, or Manchester Metropolitan University. Liam's research interest is in physiological testing and physical interventions in health settings. Liam brings this research into the experiences of students by simulation on applied physiology situations, applying knowledge from the classroom in simulated practical environments using X-reality, storytelling, and technical skill training and assessment. So had a few chats with, got to know Liam a little bit recently, and yeah, really looking forward to having him talk about his usage of Vevox. And yeah, sharing that. As always, with a Vevox webinar, this is of course interactive, and there will be polls being run, and we'll have some time at the end for Q&A for you all to ask Liam some questions. Okay, so without further ado, I think it's time to hand over to Liam.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Ethan, and yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak today. So my talk is, as Ethan mentioned, I'm interested in, I'm a physiologist by training, so my research area is in surgical recovery. So I'm really and a bit about master athletes as well, and healthy aging. So it's quite a wide area of sports medicine combined with anesthesia a little bit. There's all sorts going on in there. So the point I'm trying to make is it's really difficult sometimes to bring that experience to my learners, because I can't take them to the hospital. I can't take them immediately into those environments. So I've been looking for ways in the last few years to bring that experience to the student in the lecture theatre. And Vevox has allowed me to do that a little bit. So I'm just going to talk through a couple of slides on my sort of, for want of a better term, like a journey, I guess, on that and how I've come to do that. So just a warning before I go on, this interactive session just does include descriptions, sounds and images, AI generated images depicting a clinical scenario, just to let you know. There will be sounds throughout the, or videos played throughout the session as well. And that is just, there might be alarms playing or something like that, just to warn you that those are coming up. All right. So how did I use Vevox polling before I started on this? So I've been using it for quite some time, and Ethan told me for quite a lot, it's quite a lot longer and quite a lot more usage than I thought I was, to be honest, from his data. So I was using it primarily pre-pandemic and during the pandemic, when we all changed to online learning in the UK for the most part. So teaching via various online platforms, Zoom, Teams, wherever it might have been. I used it as a really nice way to confirm that I've got through, if that makes sense. So what are the core concepts that I've been talking about are landing with my learners. So a lot of polling with MCQs, multiple choice questions from previous slides, going back if they needed to, things like that. And the anonymity, say that a bit slower, anonymity of this was really seemingly appreciated by students. And they told me as well that it was an ability to safely get things wrong, which was really appreciated. So I've kept that on quite a lot throughout my in-person teaching as well, as we've moved post-pandemic. So as I say, our learners still tell us that they really love this ability to get things wrong, but safely, and fail safely almost. So our work in this AI generated image here is quite similar to this. So working in, they've got a lab space there, clinical practice. We have students from all sorts of different disciplines. So that ability to kind of come together and answer questions together was really appreciated by them. So my usage was quite limited, but really useful for me and my learners. So I'm quite happy to admit I was quite limited, and within reason I am still quite limited in my usage of these polling pieces of software. So I am finding my feet with them, but they're really amazing to do this sort of stuff, I've found. So on that, I've again bringing those scenarios. The position that we have here on the screen there, this image, is from our clinical simulation suites here in our School of Nursing in another department in our university. And we're really fortunate to have this amazing setup. And we've got 2 of these clinical simulation suites. And I use them quite regularly with our nurses, because our nursing academics, because these sets of papers are published a few years ago in Advances in Physiology Education. All tell us, and also my data from surveying my students, is they all want to work in this environment when they graduate. So I've got to start with the end in mind, to quote this paper at the top there, which is a really great read. I recommend reading those as well. And in the field that I work in, of physiology, around 90% of students surveyed aspired to a career in healthcare. So I need to be providing those sorts of experiences. I'm not in a medical school, so I'm not able to do that. So how do I do it? So if we've got these aspirations for our students, the training that I need to provide, I guess, has to match that. So how to do that was really tough for big numbers. So every year on average, we have around 350 students in our institution studying a variety of courses in our department. And as you can see on the image on the right there, that room, funnily enough, is not going to hold 350 people at a time. So I have to be able to get these experiences for those students, as well as those sorts of really hands-on experiences. I need to provide them en masse as well. And that, for me, comes from this telling tales, storytelling, learning through storytelling. And I'm quite fascinated about this as a student myself of human physiology. And as humans, we seemingly are really hardwired, neurologically wired to remember and understand stories and experiences. The speaker last week at Dublin City also alluded to this, of the title being turning misfortune into a blessing. It's that, in a sense, learning to fail and learning from that failed experience or that success. So we know loads of songs. I bet all of us are now humming or now thinking about a favourite song, or a song that we know is really close to us. Images of a certain place or a certain time, smells, sounds, all these different things we associate with different memories. If I give you an example, just put those words on the screen there. You all have a song in your mind, and you probably all have images going through your mind as well, of nursery rhymes, things like that. I'm at a position in life where I've got young children now, and it's quite surprising how many nursery rhymes and things like that you just remember. You just you haven't looked at them for many years, and then suddenly you just remember them, and it brings back, it's so deeply ingrained. So I'm trying to bring that to my learners, not necessarily with nursery rhymes, but with physiological experiences that they can live and be part of. And as I say, Patrick last week, or last time in the last Vevox webinar, I was really interested in watching that, with learning from experiences. And I really recommend going back to watch that one. It was a really fascinating talk from Patrick. So this is how I normally do this with my learners. I've got a cohort of about 50 students per year in one of my programs. And I use this thing here with all these rather exciting images here, and something we have here at Manchester Met, we're really fortunate to have, is our CAVE, or Computer Automated Virtual Environment, CAVE for short. And I can put learners in all sorts of scenarios. I have a simulation where I do an altitude simulation, which I'm going to give you a taster of in a minute. I've got simulations where I've designed them and in clinical scenarios and various other scenarios that I can place our learners, and they work as a team and applied problem solve, as opposed to a lecture, which is all well and good, but it's not applying that knowledge or problem solving. And also these, I've just actually this morning delivered a session with a bunch of our patient simulators that we have, modeling a bunch of health conditions and having students problem solve to diagnose a patient. The issue is, as is always the case, that's quite limited in terms of numbers that I can get through those simulations and those. So it does take quite some time with a multitude of repeats. So what I'd like to do is prepare our students for that and provide alternatives as well. The issue is, for all of us, we're doing it in places like this, in our institutions, so rows of seats or places or lecture theatres and things like that, which aren't really best will in the world, are not. It's very hard to say, okay, we're going to fly to the top of Everest and understand what altitude does to our physiology and our physical function. It's very different when you sat on the second floor of a building in the city centre of Manchester with traffic going past, to imagine that. So I look for all these different ways, and I'm going to give you a taste of what I have developed for the students to sort of better simulate that. They are still on the second floor of a building in the city centre of Manchester, but hopefully it brings it to the learner a little bit more using the polling software and involving the student in that experience and talking through it. So I was curious at that time, when I was developing these sessions, it was really good, these simulations, and we know that simulation seems to be really well received by my learners, and other colleagues at other universities have also told me this as well. I was really wondering and racking my brains, well, how do I bring this to 300 people at the same time? How on earth do I do that? And then I saw a talk from a colleague a little bit of time ago in the last series of Vevox webinars from James Wilson at University of Chichester. I'll put a QR code there if you're interested in going back there, because I've watched it a couple of times now back, actually, from James, and I was really inspired by the storytelling element and how James was bringing that to large cohorts. So I used that as a massive inspiration, and used my area, which is physiology. James is in nursing, I believe, as a discipline, and applying that to more investigative type work in physiology. And James used it really effectively and amazingly in nursing and patient care scenarios. So I've again been inspired by that, and I really recommend having a look at that as well. So let me give you an example of how I'm using it now, I suppose, after that sort of journey I've been on. So let me explain this scoring system that I use with my students and put them in clinical situations to do that. I'll ask you to do the same today, if that's okay. So this table is adapted from something called the NEWS2 score, the National Early Warning Score 2 in the UK. And it takes a bunch of physiological signs and symptoms and puts them all together to generate a score. The higher the score, the more intervention the patient may need, or the person may need, or the more clinical intervention will be focused on that patient potentially. So the way that we work this out, we have a look at the patient's or the person's vital signs on the right-hand side here, and I asked my students to do this with a clinical scenario, which I'll introduce in a moment. But we go down the screen here and calculate each one. So first of all, we start with respiratory rate. This patient's here is 18, so that fits within 12 to 20 breaths a minute. So they would score a 0, as it says at the top of that screen there. They've got the SpO2 of 94% on air, on room air. So here, that would again be a 0 because it's greater than 93% on air. You've then got the systolic blood pressure. So this person's, let me just move the screen there, excuse me, move my screen around there, is 126. So 126, it would be 0 there. again. So winding all these up, 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 0. I promise that's the hardest maths we'll do all day. Heart rate is 92 beats a minute. So that fits, oh, we're getting into a 1 now. So that fits in the 1 category above here. The patient's alert, they can either be alert or something called CVPU, which is anything other than alert. So they may be unconscious, confused, or anything else. So I'll tell you at that stage when I'm calculating this. So this person is alert. So again, they score a 0. So we're on 0, 0, 0, 1. So we're up to 1, 0. 1 plus 0 is 0. Excuse me, 1. We then have the temperature of the person, which is within this category again of 0. So the person would score, if we go through, I'll let you pull that there. So let me just go to the polling software. There should be a question appears in one moment there. Let me just move to my polling there. So this should now appear, or the poll should now be open for you. Okay. So let me move to that screen there. So you should now see that score there. Okay, so I can see some answers flying in. Thank you very much. So what is that patient's News 2 score? Okay, interesting. As we can see on screen, the mean average was 2.6. So we've got a bunch of different scores there. All right. If I now show you the correct answer, which is 1. So most people are saying 1, exactly right. So that was all those added together were 1 at that stage based on that patient's vital signs. Awesome. So the next question I have for you, how did you feel doing that? How was that for you? Which one of those, or which a multitude of those, best describe how you felt? So of course, there's no correct answer to this one. This one's, okay, so quite a mixed bag there. Yeah, confident, anxious, yeah, the calm, okay, good, quite focused, yeah. Okay, so that's going to be different for every person, I suppose, isn't it? I now have a video to play for you, okay? So I'm going to play this video. Here we go. So I'm going to introduce you to Jensen, who's going to introduce you to the scenario here.
Ah, hi. You must all be my expedition team medics. It's great to meet you. My name's Jensen. I'll be the expedition team lead. We're heading to Everest Base Camp tomorrow after the flight to Kathmandu just now. Listen, the weather's closing in, and this group we have, they've paid a lot of money for us to take them up the mountain. Base camp is 5,400 metres above sea level, so the weather becomes a bit temperamental at times. To get to the summit in time before the weather closes in, we need less acclimatisation days, so we'll head straight for Kathmandu tomorrow morning and set off as soon as we arrive. 2 days acclimatising should be fine. The group seem fine with that. All happy, yeah?
We should now go back to our poll, and the next question to open there, saying, are you happy with Jensen's plan? Okay, so wow, we've got 50-50 on our hands here. So at this stage, yeah, we would have then I would have a group discussion with my students and say, are you sure? So in the run-up to this, our students have talked about acclimatization to altitude and hypoxia or lack of oxygen in the blood. What do we do there? So what I would do at this stage with my learners is then have a group discussion and sort of say, well, do you need to, and from a team building sort of perspective, or one of those, in other words, soft skills type discussion, do you need to then have a discussion of pushing back? So the correct answer there is actually no. We should push back against our team lead here, because that may put our climbers at additional risk. So again, it takes moments. I take moments in this polling. It gives us the opportunity to sort of think, okay, when do we need to take a pause here and reconsider? So I would then say, okay, do you want to reconsider? And potential physiological implications for if that person is poorly altitude acclimatized. It can lead to all sorts of clinical issues. So if we go ahead, and then how long then would we then come back to Jensen and say how long is needed then in that case? So let me just play this next video for you. So we've said no to Jensen, okay? We've gone back and said no.
What do you mean, no? I'm the leader of this expedition. I'm not sure if you remember that fact. I do appreciate it'll be a bit tougher, but they've all signed up to a challenge, and we'll keep an eye on them. Anyway, I've got my route planning to finish off. Haven't you got some kit to check or something?
Okay, so Jensen's a little bit unhappy. Again, it's that sort of taking that moment to pause with learners to say, well, it's not just those scientific skills and the core stuff that we're talking about here. What about those sort of soft skills, those skills of a graduate that we need to push back, or we need to say, right, I need more information to make this decision and not leap into things. So again, there's those sorts of discussions that can be had in these sorts of scenarios. So one of the party, you're on the mountain, and one of the party becomes unwell. And as the team medics, as the team physiologists, it's our job to then evacuate that person back to hospital. Okay, so I'll then ask you to calculate this person's News 2 score. So I'm going to play you a video, and I want you to recalculate this person's News 2 score here. So here we go. Let's calculate this News 2 score. You have all the vital signs of the patient, and you also have the News 2 calculator on the right-hand side there. All right, so off you go. If you now start calculating that for me and come up with a total score. I'm now going to put you in the real world. So you're going to hear some voices, some noises that are going to place you in that real world scenario.
Hi, it's Liam here over on Critical Care. I've just got a patient I need to discharge today. Can one of you please prescribe this naproxen for me? That would be great. Cheers, thank you. Bye now.
What's going on? Why are you making such a fuss? Give me an update, now!
You! I've been waiting to be seen for over 30 minutes. It's disgusting. I've got a pounding headache, and I could be dying for you, you know. I better be seen in the next 10 minutes, or I'll be filing a complaint to your boss.
We now have our News 2 score, hopefully. So you can see the screen in front of you there. Have your News 2 score in mind. And what I'm going to do is bring back the poll there. And this question should appear in front of you on your poll there. So what was the patient News 2 score that time? Now there was the additional challenge. There was quite a little bit more maths in there. Sorry, I didn't warn you about that. Maybe I should have put a warning of that as well at the beginning, possibly. But do your best. Again, remember, you can fail safely here. That's the whole point. And again, with my learners, I emphasize that. Put nothing. It's better to get something wrong and learn from it rather than put nothing at all. Excellent. I'll give you another second there to calculate that. Jensen is waiting. And you've also got a very angry colleague of mine who's not been seen in the hospital, and he's getting rather upset. A very mixed bag. It's much more difficult, isn't it? It's way more difficult. We have our learners in tutorial rooms and things like that. And we say, okay, let's calm it down for 5 minutes. Let's calculate the score. Let's solve this problem. That's not the real world, unfortunately, sadly. There will be noises in the background. There will be things going on. Just me as an example, if you're delivering teaching, I was delivering this webinar today. I moved to another room, I have to set up, things like that. It's not everything works exactly in the real world as it does in a perfectly sanitary condition, so to speak. So the correct answer is right in the middle there. So if you bang on correct, 13. So you're all in the ballpark, a lot of people in the ballpark there, but you see the reasoning there gets really so much more difficult when you put them in that, in inverted commas, sort of real world scenario. So if I ask you another question, and think back to the first one there, I'm going to re-pause this question here. How did you feel when you were calculating that one? And this is going to be quite telling, and I want to dissect this a little bit about generally how the audience here felt. So put as many as you like that best fit your general feeling about what just happened in the scenario there. I hiss no ice. You've treated the person, they're totally fine, and they've made a full recovery, gone home, and been totally healthy. But how did you feel when you were doing that the second time around in that real world sort of situation? Again, this one, obviously there is no right or wrong answer. And it's, again, important with my learners, you would say that, how does that make you feel? Okay, how do you combat that in the future? If you feel really sort of worried about that or very pressured by that, what strategies can you give to make that better next time? So it's much more than just the technical skill of the science behind that. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll close that poll. Nice job. Thank you very much for your answers, everyone. Very different. Yeah, very, very different. So less confidence there, significantly less, which is normal, I guess, in that situation. Motivated, excellent, because there is a real push there, isn't there? Now, these ones, some of the answers, pressured there, stressed, determined's really nice, and focused is really nice. But the one thing that I've, again, from feedback from my learners in the sessions and the students in the sessions, we want to be really careful how much stress and pressure we apply and when we apply it. Some of the survey data that I've published in the past sort of says that our students in this sort of situation, some students simply may risk sort of switching off almost. They've seem to reach a stress threshold, a cognitive stress threshold or pressure threshold, and the learning seems to be then an issue. And is the person learning something from that experience, or have they just thought, that's so stressful, I never want to do that again? So it's a fine balance, I suppose. And I'm not sure if I've got that fine balance just yet, but I think I'm getting there. And my learners seem to really appreciate the sort of real worldy type activities that we're doing there. So to wrap up there, some thoughts on how this has met my educational aims, certainly anyway, and what I want to do with my students and what my students really want to do is, I'm working with quite a lot of academics across our institution now to embed this in their subject areas as well. So I work really closely with the Department of Nursing, and we're sort of co-leads on this. The Department of Nursing are really well established in our institution in doing this kind of work because it's their everyday life. But I'm working quite a lot with engineers and other natural scientists and other expertise to embed that, because all of us will work in that big real world at some point once those students graduate. LOs meaning learning outcomes, excuse me for the abbreviation, but learning outcomes of problem solving, creativity, critical thought. Really also as well, which I got from James Wilson's talk last time, was that human aspect of what we do. The degree I lead is called human physiology, and we often forget that element. It becomes a bunch of numbers and a bunch of, but there is a human there, and we need to be really sort of applying those softer skills of communication, problem solving with a person there, and being creative about that. And it allows our learners to really apply their learning in inverted commas real world, but the point is safely. Students can fail and do that safely in this sort of environment. It involves our learning, so as you've seen, it's quite active with that polling and things like that. Allows our learners to apply that learning and apply those tools elsewhere. So those communication skills, thinking, have I got a proper briefing to be doing this? Do I need to seek more information? All those other things. And also, the really key thing for me is trying to embed with my students is that there's no right answer a lot of the times, or correct, 100% correct. A lot of the time before the student reaches us at university level, their training sometimes is very much that there's a correct answer and an incorrect answer. And at university level and higher education, further education as well, there isn't always a right answer. There's many different aspects of things, and as long as something is evidence-based, a lot of the times that is perfectly valid. So it allows learners to really choose the best based on their analysis, where a lot of other assessment techniques don't fully allow that to happen. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that's been useful and interesting. There's no more maths, you'll be really glad to know. But I hand over back to Ethan.
All right, thank you so much, Liam. That was really, really interesting. And I know that the second time you went through that, those kind of numbers and made us do the maths again, it was a lot harder. And yeah, there are just a lot more things going on. So yeah, no, it's really interesting to hear about, or just kind of get an understanding of what it is that you put your students through. So that's amazing. I'll be jumping over to the Vevox Q&A in just a moment. I know we've got a few questions in there, but just before I do, just to make you aware of a couple of upcoming webinars. So on the 11th of July at 3 p.m. UK time, we have our next edition of the Vevox Seasonal Roundup with our colleagues Lewis and Kyle. So do join that to find out about kind of what's coming in the platform and what's been recently released. And then just a reminder to everyone that every Tuesday at 4 p.m, we have a beginner's guide to Vevox, just a quick 15-minute webinar. And then at 4:30, a beginner's guide to PowerPoint. All right, so directing these questions to you, Liam. So has the way you run sessions such as this with students changed since you started doing it in this way?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, good question. Yeah, yes, in short, yeah. I think I use PowerPoint quite a lot, as we all do, I suppose. So all my slides were through PowerPoint there, of course. But yeah, the Vevox app has allowed us to do that really, and really embed things like that. I noticed another question there as well about video and things like that as well. So one of the main things is embedding things like video. So a lot of the voices there, I have permission from my colleagues there. So one is my office mate, actually, who I send scripts to various colleagues, and they very kindly send back voice recordings of them, and I embed them in my PowerPoints essentially. A lot of the artwork, again, I got from a colleague James Wilson there at University of Chichester with AI generated imagery, where that imagery sometimes can be, especially if you're working in sensitive areas, and with other people, it becomes very difficult, whereas that AI imagery is copyright free. So it's really useful to do, and really useful, easy to generate, even for someone who's not great with technology, despite giving this webinar. It allows that really sort of ease to embed it all in PowerPoint. Whereas before I was doing it with patient simulators and things like that, which are inevitably in quite small rooms, and it's quite difficult to do in those scenarios. So yeah, doing it with videos and things like that has really allowed me to do that, I suppose.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. I mean, yeah, so should be, I guess, noted that we've had to slightly change the way that Liam runs this because of difficulties with the platform that we use to run these webinars. So the way that Liam ran it today isn't exactly the same as he does normally. Yeah, as I understand it, you normally run it through kind of everything through PowerPoint. But no, you did very well. There's a comment at the top there, just great stuff for managing all the technology within a live webinar. So, so yeah, well done.
Yeah, it worked very well. Yeah, but essentially it's videos. Yeah, it could be done like that for live, I suppose, as well. I tend to do it just in PowerPoint all because it's one thing to manage, but videos equally are totally fine. I've got colleagues who used the videos before and things like that of different scenarios that they can't really embed in PowerPoint for one reason or another. So yeah, it worked. Yeah, hopefully it worked very well today as well. Yeah, definitely.
So this question about the video, is it or isn't it embedded in the Vevox quiz or a separate thing? So yeah, no, the video was part of GoTo today. So the Vevox quiz was run on Vevox, and the video wasn't through Vevox. So this was great, really inspiring. Thank you.
Oh, thank you
to everyone sent that, and thank you to Liam, not taking any credit here. How high is your participation rate generally among your students when you run this sort of thing?
Yeah, really good usually. I think the anonymity helps. But I speak to colleagues in other institutions as well, and I don't know if anyone else in the audience felt this as well if they were teaching during the pandemic. Our systems all have, because everyone logs in using their student ID and my staff ID at my institution. So I could see that, the student email account and my email account and everything showed up. And I don't know whether everyone else in the audience feels this way, but my engagement in those webinars and things like that during the lockdowns was amazing, really good. And so I thought, oh, well, students are really may feel in front of 200 other people. As in a lecture theatre, I'm not usually one to stick my hand up. Even at a conference now, I'm not usually with 50 other people around. I tend to approach the person afterwards. And I have to, think about that with my learners as well, because that's, but in Teams and all these other webinar-based softwares, you can see who's asking questions, and it didn't seem to put students off. So actually about the same, no matter what the format, it tends to be about 75 to 80%, I would argue, usually, based on the numbers I see on the screen appearing when I put those questions. And the good thing is, I tend to say right now is the time to get it wrong. You don't want to get it wrong in the exam, so get it wrong now. If you don't know, have a guess. And that seems to put people at ease as well, as, right, okay, he's not watching me. I can get this wrong and he doesn't know it's me, which is a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Liam. Yeah, I mean, it's something that, looking back at my days in kind of education, having the anonymity would have been just amazing. Just being given the freedom to just get it wrong, and if you get it wrong, there's no consequences of that, but at least you've got it wrong and can go away and do something about it at that point.
Well, that's the thing, doing something about it. I do often say as well, it's like, right, if you got that wrong, write it down. Write down that you got that wrong, and then that's something to go back to. Yeah.
All right, I'm just going to, some of these questions have come in a bit more recently, so I'm going to go to the ones that came in less recently. So you mentioned hypoxia earlier. Can you just explain quickly what that is?
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, it's a physiological clinical term for reduction of oxygen, essentially. So I mean, it's whether that's through a heart condition, lung condition, or whatever that may be. So it's a reduction of oxygen in a human system, I suppose. Or indeed any system, I suppose. But
Thank you very much. And then, what do your students think of Vevox?
Big fans. Yeah, big fans. Again, for all of the above reasons, I find. It's also a really nice revision tool, because on my virtual learning environment, I post all of those questions as well. So students can use them as sort of revision questions later on as well, so that it's not lost and gone forever, and that's the only opportunity. So all my survey data that I've surveyed my students with, and colleagues as well, seem to really like it. For that, again, failing safely kind of idea, I suppose. I've not had any sort of tech issues in terms of students not being able to engage with it because of the technology or anything, but I appreciate that may be an issue potentially, but I've not seen it. Students generally are able to engage with it really well, because I've got really high participation rates.
The main tech issue we tend to hear about is, well, it's not to do with Vevox really. It's kind of maybe Wi-Fi, or I guess if a student doesn't have access to a device that can respond to this sort of stuff. But it's the main issue that we sometimes see is Wi-Fi.
Something I'm very conscious of, especially with mobile devices as well. If the student has one, and again, it's ensuring just spread around the room if a person doesn't, or providing those as well, which our institution is able to do as well, which is really nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm aware that we're actually a minute over now, so we've got a couple more questions, but I'm going to finish it up there unless everyone kind of gets on with their days now. But just want to say, firstly, a massive thank you to you, Liam, for agreeing to run this webinar and bearing with us with some of the technical challenges that we've had, kind of making your workflow kind of work. So thank you so much for agreeing to run this today. I found it fascinating, and I'm sure everyone else has too. And just a big thank you to everyone for attending. It's been a pleasure to have you all here, and we look forward to seeing you all in the next series in autumn.